All right, so I just got a brand new camera. Well, it's brand new to me, but used camera. And I'm gonna set it up. It's set up to the factory defaults right now. So I want it to get to how my other cameras look. So when I pick it up, I know which buttons focus, I know what releases the shutter, I know how to change the ISO. I can do all that stuff, and it's essentially the exact same as my other cameras. That way when I'm out on a field or at the court, I don't need to be fumbling around with settings and missing pictures. Got this little contraption up here so that I can record the screen, just so you guys can see it on there. It's gonna be super helpful when you're going through the menus. This is a Canon camera, but a lot of these settings will apply to Nikon, Sony. You can set up similar things, they just might be called something slightly different. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is set up back button focusing. So I'm gonna use one of these buttons back here to focus, and I'm gonna take away the focus from the shutter. So that's very key to back button focus is you need to change the shutter so that it only releases the shutter. It does not focus when you press this button, only when you press this back button. And then I'm actually gonna change the star button here to also focus, just in case my thumb fits better in that position. So you can go to the menu, go to the settings, it's like the orange one for me, and go to customize buttons. And then you can see that there's like a little diagram on the left here that's showing which button you're actually changing, and then on the right, you can choose that button. So I'm gonna go in here, you can see it's like eye control metering, and I'm gonna just go to metering start. That's all I want it to do. Start the metering when I do the half press. All right, so whenever I press it, it's just gonna do the metering, and then when I fully click, it will take the picture. Now I want to scroll down and make sure that that AF on button is ready for metering and the AF start. Make sure that's on. And I said I was going to change that star button also. So right now it's on a lock, but I actually want to change it to metering and AF start. Now if you do have eye autofocus, I like to actually turn that on to that star button. That way I can instantly go from regular focus to eye autofocus if I want to. I don't use eye autofocus a ton with sports, but there are certain times where it does help a lot. So I'm actually going to do that. Now the next thing I'm going to do, so related to focus, is I'm going to set my focus point. So if I get to the focus settings, so if I go to my menu and I go to the autofocus section and I go AF area, I typically use spot AF or a 1 point. I know a lot of people use the cross as well. Other than that, I don't really get into these other zones. Maybe if I'm doing a remote camera or something like that, I'll use one of these flexi zones, but in general, I'm just using this spot AF or 1 point. So I'm just gonna change that to 1 point right now. All right, so while we're still on autofocus, I'm gonna change this orientation linked autofocus point to separate AF points only. So that means I'm gonna have a separate autofocus point if I'm horizontal or if I'm shooting vertical. So it's great for if you're shooting like basketball and you're shooting horizontally and then you want to switch to vertical, you don't have to move that autofocus point around. You can leave it set to where you want it when you're vertical, and then you can also have it somewhere different when you're in horizontal, and it will automatically change. All right, the next thing you want to do is just make sure that you're in autofocus is in servo mode and not single points. You can do that either on that back screen, or you can go into your settings, and under AF operation you can click and it's the same thing. And when shooting sports, you want to be shooting at your fastest frame rate, so make sure that you do not have this on single shooting. You want it on your high speed continuous, whatever your highest setting is. So you can get that from the back of the camera. This is a great spot to just kind of move around to a lot of quick things that you might want to change. And that's also under drive mode in the menu settings. Okay, the next thing I want to do is set up my highlight alert. So that's going to be, for me, under this blue section with the little play button, and I want to go to highlight alert and enable. So if you're shooting in the sun, you have a white jersey, you're going to see, if you have this on, that there'll be little blinking spots. And when that happens, that means that that area is blown out. So if you have a couple, little dots, it's okay. But if your whole picture is just kind of blinking, you know you're overexposed and you need to change your settings. So it's an easy, quick way to check to see if you're overexposed or underexposed. All right, next is the autofocus cases. Some cameras have this, I think most do. I typically do like a case 4, and sometimes I'll even change the tracking sensitivity or the accel decel tracking. For me, that works. I honestly don't find a huge difference between all the cases. I haven't done like extensive studies, but for me it works. I'm not finding that I'm missing a ton of photos or anything like that. All right, the next thing I'm gonna set up is just make sure I have my custom modes on. So under the orange section here is where mine is, restrict shooting modes. I wanna make sure that I have the C1 checked, I kind of just like one custom mode because I like to switch between the manual settings and then this custom setting. So I can kind of have two settings ready to go. So also there is a custom mode setting. So what you want to make sure you can register the settings you have right now. It'll go to that custom mode. So when you click the button to go to custom C1, it'll switch the settings automatically on your camera. So this is great if you're doing like slow panning shots, be able to go from like fast shutter to a slow shutter really quickly. Now I like to have the auto update settings. So that way, basically if I change my settings on the custom mode, it will automatically keep those settings when I switch back to manual and then back to custom. It'll be what I had at custom before when I changed it. If you disable this is great for maybe if you do a lot of portraits and you use certain lighting setups all the time. You can set your custom mode to just like always be like 1/200th of a second, f-stop 2.8, and your ISO at 100. That way you know you're starting at those settings every time. And this applies not just to like your settings, but it's like everything on the camera, like your screen brightness, white balance, everything. So if you get it set up exactly how you want for like a portrait shoot, then you can set it in that custom mode, and then all you have to do is click to C1 and it'll be default that settings no matter what. And then while I'm in this yellow settings, what I'll do is I'll change the file name. Actually, I like to use my initials just so that it's like in the file names, I have my initials there just so I know, okay? And I don't have this, let's just like random numbers and letters. It could be my initials and then maybe the camera I'm using. So I might do my initials, and then if there's room, I'll do like R3. If not, I might just put my initials in 3. That way I kind of know which camera it's coming from and then that it's my photo. And then while I'm here, just scroll right down to the date and time, make sure that it is correct. Right now mine is off by an hour, so I'll update this. When you're shooting sports and you're shooting with other people, you want your photos to kind of sync up. You don't want all my photos in a gallery to be, if I'm an hour off, it's going to be all my photos from like the whole game or the first half, and then it's going to be the other photographers for the whole first half mixed with my second half images and then only their second half images. So you kind of want to have your time correct so that if you're shooting with other people, that all those images sync up and line up so you can see maybe the same play from multiple different angles. And something that's on this camera, because it's a built-in grip, it has these vertical controls. So if you shoot this way, you can use these. It's nice to use, but honestly, sometimes if I have that on and I'm shooting horizontally, my hand will kind of rub against the autofocus thing and it might move the point around or change the settings a little bit. And so I will turn that off. If I'm gonna shoot a lot of vertical portraits or something like that, then I will turn it back on so that I can use it just so it's more comfortable. But other than that, I kind of just leave it off. And then something else I like to do is change the screen brightness actually. So you can go in here of your LCD screen, change the brightness, and you can also change your viewfinder, or you can change your color tone, and you want to get those settings that are right for you. And then one of the last things I like to do is make a custom menu tab so that it has all those settings that I'm going to be changing frequently. Like if I want to change the highlight alert to off, I can do that really quick and I don't have to go searching through the entire menu for it. Or if I want to change from electronic shutter mode to mechanical shutter mode, again, I don't want to be searching through my menu. I just want to have it, all those things that I'm going to be changing fairly often in this one custom menu tab. So I can just go to my tab, add a menu 1, configure, select items to register. So let's see, I can do anti-flicker shoot, something I'm going to use today, to be honest. There's a gym I go to, ton of flicker in the lights. Going to need to be able to access this pretty quickly. So put on anti-flicker, and then external speed light control if you're going to be shooting events with a speed light, or then you need to have this on so you can turn it on and off, because sometimes I want it off if I'm using a remote camera and I have a receiver on top. I don't want it to fire because I have another trigger for it. Multiple exposure, again, custom menu. I use this all the time when I get bored at shoots and I've got everything I need. Try some multiple exposures out. Shutter mode, again, switching back and forth between mechanical and electronic. Image review, so I actually like to use this. I'll change it to 0 seconds, so no review, or maybe 2 seconds for the regular review. So if I'm shooting like with the camera down on the floor, I don't want the image to pop up if I let go, because I'm using the viewfinder to actually take the photos. So I don't want that image to pop up. Also, scrolling through all this is a great way to just let you see all the different settings that you have and that you can go through. Highlight alert, add that. And if there's any other settings that pop up where I'm like, oh, I'm changing this a lot, I can add it to that menu or create a second menu right next to it. And then, so you can see this is filled up. I can actually add another menu tab so I could have 2 custom menus at the top. All right, so that's how I set up my camera for sports. It's just a quick rundown of like the most important things that I really want to make sure my camera is doing and set up well, so that, again, when I can grab this afternoon, it's ready to go just like my old cameras, and I know how to use it. So I hope that's helpful. If there's any other settings that you use that you love to use, please let me know. I'm always trying to figure out how to be quicker with my menus and settings and changing things around on my camera. I had a buddy tell me about those custom modes. See you next time.